Aloha, this is Georgine Adams opening the Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 Environmental Management Commission meeting held live in Hilo. And the rest of us lazy bums who have no car today is on Zoom. So welcome all. Go through and people can wave. Perhaps the crowd in the room could introduce themselves, the commissioners.
Laura Apasio, District 2.
Oh, John Olson, District 5.
Those are the only two commissioners in the room, correct?
Yes. Correct.
All right. We'll come back for any guests. Del Otsuka wave is District 3. Melissa Cardwell is with District 5, and we don't think she's going to be with us. Lee McIntosh is from District 6. We have a vacancy for District 7 still. And hopefully we'll have a person joining us for that. And then Dorothy or Dot Morris is there, thank you. And I'm Georgine, she's representing District 8, and I am Georgine Adams, and I am in District 9. And hopefully I won't lose my voice today, or John, you may get to take over the meeting anyway. First item of agenda. So I called the meeting officially to order, whatever time.
Georgine, I was just going to say I'm here as well.
Oh,
John,
I forgot you. I'm sorry. You were top of the list. That's why. My list in District 1. So thank you. You can join us. This is why we're having a meeting on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So hopefully that helped with your schedule. You've started school.
Yes, we are back. The madness is happening again. So yeah, Tuesday was great. Thank you.
Okay, great. So starting the meeting, the very next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from July 26, 2023. Can I get a motion? John, and a second?
Yep.
Second.
Who was the second?
Apasio.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any discussion, corrections of the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor of approving the minutes of our last meeting on July 26th, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Hearing none. Our
7 ayes.
minutes,
Yep.
our minutes are approved. Statement from the chair. Obviously, my condolences and best wishes, I'm sure from everybody, about the disaster that occurred in West Maui and Lahaina, and I hope they get to work it through and rebuild better. And I'm hoping that there is discussion amongst the environmental departments to make sure that things are being handled right and prevent future issues from coming up. We all have our challenges. Had a few fires over here as well and need to be aware. We appear to have several members of the public that represent, would like to make presentation testimony at this time or at the time that a topic comes up on the agenda.
At the time the topic comes up.
When it comes up, okay. Anybody else there? Or on the phone? Okay, Kristen Kubat will let us know which items you want to talk on.
It's this presentation here that you made. Presentation. No, no presentation. Okay. Then I just will take a few minutes, can I? And get back to you.
Okay. We'll move into our next item 4, excuse me, 5, unfinished business. The first item is pre-treatment rule draft and a status report, since we didn't get a copy in our package. Anybody from DEM?
Hey guys, I'm here.
Hi, Chris.
I apologize. I'm a little behind on my emails, but I'm assuming Ramsey okay that I could just send it to you to get some help editing and revising it. So I'll follow up with him and get you a copy this week.
Okay.
So that's going to be the proposed ordinance, and I'll send you the model ordinance from EPA so you can see what has to be in it. And then, since you volunteered, I'll also send you the draft of the administrative rules, because I moved a lot of the jargon from the model ordinance into the administrative rules because it's too much for the ordinance. I mean, sorry, for the county code. So I moved that over into the administrative rules. So I'll send you both of those.
Okay, great. I will endeavor to take a shot at it.
Okay.
So thank you for that. Item 2 under unfinished business. God, I hope my voice hangs in.
Yeah, me too.
Be able to handle it. Is to look at the drafts of possible both ordinance and a letter that would go to the county council asking to, let's start the process and look at how can we begin to stop landfilling recyclable materials. And basically I've been calling it a ban that would be phased in and looked at for feasibility of what we know we can get recycled by the people who can get their materials to be recycled, because we all know we're running out of room in our one and only landfill. So at this time, what I would like to do is to go over the letter, the transmittal letter that I put in the record and see whether or not there are changes. I guess I should back up and do this by Robert's rules. If we think that we want to move forward on it, which we did at the last meeting, whether we need to do another motion to adopt this letter and authorize me and Peter to send it off to council. If we need to get an official motion again to do that, or if we could just dive right in and see if there are any changes that people would like to see first.
Georgine, if I may, this is Sherry.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you. It's our deputy corporate counsel.
Yes, could you take a motion to entertain the proposed letter that you provided to the commission so that you folks can go into a discussion on the components of it, please?
Okay. Can I get a motion to send this letter to Heather to begin the process of writing a new ordinance?
So moved.
John, a second
Second.
from Dell. Thank you.
There's an opportunity for.
All right, so to discuss what I put together is basically a request to Heather Kimball as chair of the council to begin the process. I tried to be clear that the draft ordinance is just that, a draft ordinance to begin discussion. Rather than asking that at this time, the EMC approve every word that's in that ordinance. It is meant to be a discussion draft. The other thing I stuck in this letter is the shaded part there. And that is whether or not, and I was taking a little bit of liberty here, whether or not the EMC would like to go on record saying, we did not really support the approach that appeared to be in resolution 7323, where the basically the UMA biochar unit was going to be the one and only place all our solid waste was to go to in 2026. We don't have to have that language in there. I wanted to offer it up as a possible. And you may not like the wording that I came up with. So if there are discussions around that section, go for it.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I kind of think it's two issues you're trying to put into one. I think the optional language should be, should be something separate that we do. I don't think it should be included in this. It might get lost as they're reading it. They might glance over it. If the commission wants to send something like this, it should be separate to them.
Okay. Other comments about talking about 7323?
I think it's very pertinent. This is this is Commissioner Basio. I think it's very pertinent to this particular memorandum. I think we would likely have more intimate discussion on it, perhaps, if commissioners think so as well. But I definitely have concern. I like how you phrase it may be useful for pyrolysis to have some utility, as opposed to factually, because we haven't really dove into that in detail, at least not while I've been here. So short amount of time. I imagine there's some historical conversations. Yeah, but I also think that I agree with the previous commissioner in that it also could use some separate special attention so as it is not missed. One of the concerns I think that I appreciate your language, Chair, because our green waste especially is prized in our community. And so the discussion around utilizing that for alternative purposes than it is right now, it requires some incredible amount of public outreach as well as attention.
What do other commissioners think? I mean, we could leave something, and maybe we need to make it stand alone a little bit better to highlight it, or deal with it in a separate communication to the council. Dot, you have a comment?
Yeah, I like the language. I like the idea of introducing other ideas. Maybe we could actually include that in the statement, saying that other feasible alternatives should be included as well. I don't know. That's my comment.
The only comment I'll make on it is, you know, we just opened the door. And we're going to be hearing back from the council people. We're going to be hearing back from the administration. You know, we open the door, walk through it, and start handing it out and make them think about it. That's where we're at.
Anyone else? Well, I'm hearing a bit of a mix. Leave it in sort of as it is, or pull it out and deal with it as a separate letter. Do we need a vote on that?
You do?
Okay.
That was a question.
Yeah. What, I need a sub motion.
Well, essentially, based on the discussion that was had, my recommendation would be that you table this to the next meeting and have the commissioners who would like to provide alternative language provide that, so that you can have a discussion on what other options might be considered, or a motion to either take it out or leave it in.
Yeah, Georgina, I was just going to make a comment. I mean, I think that's a good suggestion, because I mean, they're good statements. It's just vague. So it might be good to be somewhat more specific about the recommendation, or to perhaps just, you know, if we're asking the county to focus on one part, I mean, maybe it would just be good to request that there's, you know, like discussions on a timeline. So as they progress, because, you know, it's not clear exactly what the approach will be at this point, since it's a developing plan. So it might be more easier to navigate, I'll say, if there's like a direct timeline of just saying as their approach becomes detailed, to just bring it to the commission for discussion and input.
It could be. I mean, the language, just the way the draft is laid out, and when I flip the page to the next part of the letter, you know, talking about the hierarchy and having things that are basically incineration and producing ash of various sorts is toward the end of the actions and the priorities that we'd like to take. So the general concept is already in there. It's pulling out that specific resolution as a highlight. And it's why I put it in, well, came out gray. It's yellow in my version, as something that could be left out without halting the process, at least to get the conversation going. And part of it is, I don't really know which committee in the council will be looking at this, if they choose to look at it. So part of it is just to ask, what's the process here? Where do we go from here of the council? So I think you're right, John, that there are going to be plenty of opportunities to talk about all the nitty-gritty details as we go through this. So
yeah, I mean,
the feelings at all to delete that whole section.
Yeah, I'm just sort of specifically the second paragraph, you know, where it's like talking about pyrolysis and not encouraging a cavalier attitude. Like the point is there, but then what that would mean is difficult to ascertain. So it might just be something of again, yeah, like if they're gonna, out of that hierarchy list, as they strategize, you know, then it would just be helpful to provide the EMC with options to provide feedback, you know, and input. based on what they choose. Because I mean, I do believe in these scenarios, like a pragmatic outlook is very good, where, you know, the solutions that present themselves down the road could easily not be something we're anticipating now, just because of how that process plays out. Yeah, so I mean, like a timetable of feedback might be more useful than just that sort of a suggestion.
Well, I'm not sure it's totally appropriate, but if I could make a motion, or if somebody would like to make the motion to delete references to the 7323, the shaded area, basically, and the words right before it, as a motion.
So
to
Chair,
delete
the motion,
motion
would be to amend the main motion to remove the shaded area as shown in the letter. Is that accurate? Georgine, did you hear that?
No.
Okay, the motion would be to amend the main motion to delete the shaded area in the letter.
Right.
Okay.
I would prefer that we leave it in. In other words, we're opening the door, you know, and I see a fair amount of back and forth before we get to deleting anything. In other words, we have a whole long list of issues that we're going to have to, at one level or another, to accomplish this end, get to.
Chair, no motion has been made. Just
Yeah, we don't have, I need a second, or if there's no second, then I'll withdraw the motion.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I'll second it.
Wait,
Okay.
you're
Now
making the motion or seconding?
Well, it hasn't even been made.
I need the first or second.
You're going to be the first.
Okay, I'll first it then.
Can I second it?
You can. Are you?
Well, I'll second it if I'm allowed to.
There you go. Thank you.
So the present motion is to submit the letter to council without the highlighted language.
Correct.
So maybe you should take a vote on that, because I don't think there is a consensus, and then we can move back to whatever else needs to be done after that.
All right, let's take a vote on taking out the shaded stuff.
Okay, is there any further discussion before we take the votes? If not, we'll go Ms. Ocasio.
No.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
Ms. Cardo absent. Mr. McIntosh.
Aye.
Mr. Olson.
Aye.
Ms. Otsuka.
No.
Ms. Norris.
No.
Chair Adams.
Yes.
Chair, you have 4 ayes, 3 nays.
Okay. So it does not pass, correct?
Correct.
We need 5. So it's in there. And so the question is, if it's in there.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, it's in there, it's in there.
The motion was to take it out.
Okay, my bad. I was double negative.
Should we take a revote to clarify that the motion was to take it out? Do you want to take it out or no? Revote?
Revote.
It's not wrapping around the opposite.
Okay.
So the present motion that did not pass the first round of voting is to remove the shaded language. Do we want to remove the shaded language in the proposed letter to council? So if you say yes, you want the language to be removed. If you say no, you want it to remain as presented by Chair Adam. Okay? Does anyone have a question? I can clarify. Okay.
Okay. For the revote on the previous motion, Ms. Ocasio.
Oh, I would like the language to stay.
Wait.
So that's correct.
Is that a?
So it's a no.
That's a no?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Burns?
I vote yes to remove the language.
Okay. Mr. McIntosh?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Olson?
Aye.
Ms. Otsuka?
Yes,
Ms. Otsuka? Yes.
to take it out, right?
That's a change from no to yes for the record.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Norris?
No.
No. Chair Adams?
Yes.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 ayes.
Okay. I will delete that language.
Okay.
Moving on.
Now we need a vote to send the letter with the amendment. Yeah, your original motion was whether or not we're submitting this letter to council. So now that an amendment has been made, we need to vote on submittal to council with that amendment.
Even though we haven't talked about the rest of the letter.
Oh, you can
can
do that. Go for it.
Still going.
Okay. The controversy is on the second page of this letter. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on the first page after taking that out. I do need official input from DEM on what range of years do you want to have in this letter for remaining capacity. I put it fairly broad, 15 to 25. I had received some input from Gene Quimus that he was saying 15 to 20. Ramsey or whoever else is there. Do you have a number you'd like me to put? Oh, I see there's something from Ramsey saying 20 to 25 years. Although that's, excuse me, under investigation as part of the report on a solid waste study that we're going to be hearing about.
That is correct.
Okay, so why don't we save up all the changes that we might come up with, but I would, according to DEM, and I just picked those numbers out of the air to a certain extent, we'll put in 20 to 25 years and know that the council will grill Ramsey on whatever the number is going to be. Anyway, if I can move to the second page, that I'm sorry, I'm reading Christine Kubat's. I'll let you, after we finish the discussion, I'll let you make your presentation, Christine, if I can. Unless Sherry would recommend that we let her speak before we have further discussion.
You have an open motion on the floor, Chair, and so it's not appropriate for public comment at this time.
Okay, but I will give Christine opportunity to make her statements after we close out this motion.
Yes.
So anyway, on the second page here, I wanted to put down shorter, and it wasn't as short as I was hoping I could make it. The main points that I used in putting together the draft ordinance, I'm kind of hoping that we don't spend a lot of time wordsmithing this draft ordinance, because I think it's going to get beat up multiple times as it goes through the review process with council. But these were some of the issues that I want to make sure you guys agree with in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And I guess I would ask if anybody has any questions about any of the bullets, or feels strongly that's not a bullet you want in this letter.
Chair Adams, I have a question about why not significantly expanding county services.
Because I was going on the basis that county services are already stretched beyond their capacity, and to add in even more, it's really not what we're trying to do.
So within the framework of what resources they have currently.
Correct.
As opposed to more theoretical and moving forward with Build Back Better and all kinds of other resources through the recycling, federal recycling funds, etc., that we could obtain.
Yeah, I basically behind my thinking on that, and it wasn't just my thinking. We also did it with together the ISWMP. I'm not looking to establish, for example, the county to set up a curbside collection operation. That would be a major expansion of responsibilities. And what my preference would be is that it be commercial businesses doing that, rather than we're going to have the counties take over and start all these new services.
Georgine, can
Dell, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, because I didn't get this second page. As you're going down each one, maybe you can go down and explain why you've done that, so we can have a brief discussion on each one.
I can certainly go through and explain where my brain was when I wrote these. So again, this first bullet was saying, not looking to build a monster mega DEM solid waste program. And an example of that would be for them to establish curbside collection and have county paying for the trucks and the people to conduct curbside collection for recycling or for waste, for that matter. Where I would like to see expansion is doing education programs and assistance programs. But the thrust would be to try to encourage private commercial recycling operations and keep the focus for DEM on oversight and managing the actual waste facilities. Do you want to discuss by bullet, or you want me to go through the whole schmear?
Well, maybe you can, because I didn't get to read it until now. So I know we're going to have some discussion, but at least
okay, I'll run through the whole set. Bullet 2 is to have a target that the council would use as their little baby hammer on DEM to say, we want to see a reduction in the volume of waste that's going into the landfill. And how you construct that target, you could phase it in and have, an annual, reduce it by 10%, 1%, 0.005%, whatever. Or you could have it by some time distant, 2030, 2050. We want to see landfill volumes, the amount going into the landfill reduced by 50% by a baseline of what we have now, 200,000 tons. just as a marker for DEM to be working toward and reporting back to us as EMC as well as to the council. Also that the council would come up with the basic criteria for who and what kind of wastes are going to be regulated by DEM. What I do not like as a personal bias is to have DEM basically doing what I consider administrative rulemaking and coming up with monster lists of this chemical, this waste, this person, as a long string of things that has to be adopted and approved by the tortuous methodology of council ordinances, but rather give the high level criteria for what kind of waste and what kind of operations and people generating those wastes are going to be covered, and let DEM write their administrative rules, proposing them, getting public comment, and then issuing final rules. So this is just kind of saying, what do we want out of council? We want the council to set a target on the kind of reduction we'd like to see, and let DEM actually execute how they're going to meet those targets. In this case, focusing on recyclables. This third bullet is again going in, phasing in the requirements. Start with what is currently recyclable, and then periodically update it, either adding or deleting waste or the types of generators, because the markets change. They're changing constantly. You can't make money right now off of many plastics, for example. Corrugated cardboard already dropped in the last quarter or two, a significant amount, but they're still making some money recycling it. So that one we definitely don't want to lose. And the market's going to drift up and down. And so we need to have periodically reviewing it and saying, all right, for now, we know that we can achieve these recycling, and people will generate so much of this kind of recyclable waste can effectively get it picked up and recycled. Hoping that by phasing it in and periodically doing the reality check, that there would be incentive that, hey, there's a real business opportunity here that's going to be consistent enough to justify commercial hauling and collection and maybe even processing business. And that's what the sub-bullets are about. We'd like to reduce the transport off island necessity for dealing with these wastes. So it's kind of trying to make sure that we can have a closed loop recycling opportunities where it's feasible. Fourth bullet is to focus on stuff that's really going to make a difference and how much is going to landfill. It's not worrying about the stuff that's 100 pounds a month. Sounds good, but it really isn't going to impact what we've got to happen, and that is to reduce how much is going to landfill. And we have a pretty fair idea of what the top contributors, and I've given you guys stuff before on that, you know, the paper waste is big, construction demolition waste is big, organics is big. Plastics, yeah, it's visible, but it's really not a humongous number. And then even below that, you know, different kinds of batteries. Really, there aren't that many batteries in terms of volume. It'd be good to get them out for other reasons, but to prioritize, because our goal, the primary goal of this effort is cut the volume that's filling out that landfill. Fifth bullet is focusing on life cycle impacts. It was one of the top priorities for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee that's in the Waste Management Plan. You don't want to adopt recycling processes that are worse from a life cycle impact. And we had a study done, still need to work through that. And I'd like to set up some time with the contractor who'll put that report together. But we have some input on where recycle works and doesn't work and different ways of working, so that we don't want to make the entire life cycle worse by mandating recycling just because. The next bullet is it's got to be economically feasible. The grants from the feds, magic money that's going to show up one time is not going to make a sustainable, economically sustainable process. So it's got to be feasible. And it also needs to not cause people to litter, throw it in a ditch somewhere, a gully, because it costs too much to do the recycling. So there are criteria that there need to be markets available to collect it and to do recycling, that the people who generate the recyclable waste have to have access to those recycling services, and not everybody's going to be able to have it. Start this phased process with people who generate enough stuff to warrant sending a truck to by their place to go pick up their recyclables. So large government, commercial operators, resorts. So there's a steady stream. Again, you want a sustainable business model to work. Last but not least, which doesn't have to be part of this and actually is a case that counters the first bullet, and that would be to allow more people to use a transfer station, specifically small businesses and nonprofits who shouldn't by law right now be using those transfer stations, but it would really help out a lot of people. Otherwise, I don't know what they're doing with them. They're having to pay full tipping fees, and that is expensive for them. And we thought that it is the right thing to do. It does not, however, necessarily result in a huge volume reduction to what's going in the landfill.
Georgine, I was just gonna, I had a hand raised just for that exact one.
Sorry. Okay, good. Go for it.
Well, I was just gonna say it, you know, perhaps with a small fee, again, it's a little bit, it could be misinterpreted. I mean, maybe it would just be better to put in a request a little bit more specific saying, you know, like establish a waiver application program for small businesses and nonprofits to be able to utilize transfer stations, because, you know, defining small business and nonprofit, like, I feel like what it's written, which I understand that you're saying is like, yes, for small businesses or smaller nonprofit operations, this could be really beneficial, but it, you know, it'll need to be a case-by-case basis, because some nonprofits are very large. Some small businesses might produce an excess amount of commercial waste that wouldn't be reasonable. So, you know, it could just be simpler to have a fixed commercial fee like there is now. And then if they want to get a waiver, they could fill out an application for review. So it's a little bit less uncertain with the fee structuring.
I do have in the actual draft of the ordinance probably too much stuff in there about undue hardship, so that people can essentially get a waiver if they can show that it just doesn't make economic sense for them to do it otherwise. So I try to address it there, whether it's a waiver process or what that process is. I think that's getting down to the nuts and bolts of how you make it work.
Yeah, it might be just good to make that more like use those terms here instead of the perhaps a small fee, just because then it would be, you know, something that can be, I don't know, you know, like figured out like properly. when the time comes. Yeah, that'll be a tricky one, but I do appreciate what you're trying to say. I think it's true. It's like, if you make it too difficult at that size, you know, then what do they do with that waste? And it can become problematic.
We actually, in going through the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, as we were coming up with that recommendation, which again was a top priority, DEM didn't want to, because it was going to cost them more. They'd have to have more pickups at the transfer stations because there'd be more waste showing up there. And again, this is not for waste. This is just for recycles, to allow them to use the recycling. And so there's a whole section in the ISWMP that talks about that. I'm fine with just zapping that perhaps phrase. And we can talk about that when we get to voting. Other comments, questions?
I have a follow-up, Chair.
Laura?
Follow-up to what was just the topic at hand, is that small businesses and nonprofits already utilize the system, and it's not necessarily being tracked. And then regulation, how would we regulate, the county regulate this whole system without significantly expanding county services, which goes back to an above point.
Right.
And then I'm not going to comment on it right now, but I have a lot of input for all of the other bullet points above, because I think that each individual bullet point actually would require a significant discussion amongst the commission.
I agree. It was not my intent to basically hash out in this letter or in the draft ordinance all the details and all the different positions. It was basically to set up, you know, here's kind of the baseline thinking. All right, let's discuss, negotiate, see what works and what doesn't, recognizing it. That's going to be a long process of back and forth with all sorts of stakeholders who are involved. And I'm not quite sure how we should begin it. Like I said, I was trying to come up with these bullets and to keep it at 2 pages. So maybe the council would read it. If there are ways to whittle it down or to eliminate it. I did feel that there were, again, I was calling it basic tenets, but what are we trying to do and how philosophically to go about doing it, but recognizing that there are tons of details to work out. Specifically in the small business, it is currently against administrative rules of DEM for anyone other than residents to use the transfer stations, period. The administrator can give one-off exceptions to get rid of certain particular loads, but as a rule that is not really being enforced, but a rule that small businesses and nonprofits can't, as a matter of course, use the transfer stations. Is that the reality? No comment. So it is working back from the number 1 bullet of, yeah, it would be an expansion. It would require DEM to pull more loads of recyclable waste to business services they're contracting. But it's the kind of service they're already doing. It's okay, do a little bit more because you're going to get some more volume. But that waste, hopefully, is stuff that's not going to go be thrown away in the trash chute illegally, or having to be paid tipping fees to take commercial loads to our landfill.
Can I try to,
John?
simple minds, simple solutions. We collect the disposal fee at the point of purchase.
Thank you, John. We've had this discussion and we'll be talking about funding again.
But funding is it all, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road, is in the funding. Show me the money. The guy said it. You know, you have the money in hand. The point at which it lands here, later, we get the disposal fee. End of story. Whatever.
Well, end of story. We're on record. We've had that discussion. We can try it again.
I'll keep saying it until you think it's your idea.
Well, I just FYI sidebar everybody. I'm not going to be able to do the October meeting, and John as vice chair will be handling it. So be ready. Other comments, either clarifications or
just retire. She just pulled her papers to retire.
This is Commissioner McIntosh.
Yes.
I kind of think the purpose of the letter was to, I guess, encourage adding recycling that we can do already to the do not throw and the trash bin list that they have, just to do something quick and easy to help divert some waste that goes into the landfill. I just kind of think it sort of ballooned into something else right now. And I mean, to be quite honest, I know you put a lot of work into this, but I mean, you could just remove all this and just focus on, you know, recycling almost the first page. Yeah. And the council and the DEM, they can hash, essentially the council will just, I don't even know if the council needs to give DEM permission to add to the list. Perhaps DEM can just expand the list on their own. I'm not sure what the process is of that. They may have told us at one point, but I've forgotten. So we might be trying to make this letter a lot more complicated than it really needs to be. That's just something to think about from, at least from a simple perspective.
It's certainly an option, Lee. I batted back and forth on whether or not to go into this kind of detail. And I'm not wedded to keeping all these bullet points in. I did want to lay some basic approaches that said what we are and are not trying to accomplish. But I thought I wanted to present the gamut to you guys for discussion. Other thoughts from commissioners?
Hi, Georgie.
Del, you're in the dark. It's
oh, sorry. You know, I still have to understand, we talked about it the last time about having commercial haulers take the trash and having someone inspect what they pick up. And because I just think their process was to pick up all the different container bins, collect it, and then take it to our landfill. Is that what they do? Or to the warehouse and then compress that and then put it in those 40-foot containers? Is that the process? Because I'm thinking rather than take it to the warehouse to have it compressed to go into the 40-foot containers, can't they just take it directly to the chutes and have, because that's all compressed and go just like that, right? The stuff that people take and take to the dump and down the chute, that goes directly to Pu'uanahulu, right? That's my understanding. So I'm thinking rather than have the business services or commercial people go to the warehouse to have it further handled to go into another 40-foot container, they can take it straight to the chute and have it compressed there, and then that's gone. I don't know.
There are two things that, well, multiple variables here. Trash. There are various ways people handle their trash.
Right.
Commercial vendors, larger places other than your mom and pop little store, will have a trash hauler come and pick up their trash bins, big honking trash bins. And if you're at a shopping center, it's the shopping center has trash bins, and that's where you throw your trash. There may or may not be, for those commercial businesses, others who pick up recyclable materials. There, you've seen probably bales of cardboard boxes, corrugated boxes that have been wrapped up on a pallet behind Longs, for example. Those stores pack up their recyclable materials, mostly dealing with the boxes, and they have somebody come and pick them up, or they've got their own trucks and take them to places like Atlas and business services directly, or business services might come pick them up, or Hanaho Recycling. So there are various ways that commercial entities deal with that. They cannot, as a commercial entity, legitimately throw their trash at a transfer station or take their recyclables to a transfer station. No can do. They go to redemption centers that are scattered around, not so many transfer stations anymore, and they can get their cans and bottles redeemed, but they're kind of isolated redemption centers. Residents have a variety of ways that they can get rid of their trash. They can take it to the transfer station, dump it down the chute for free, end of story. They just have to haul it themselves. They can go over to the recycle bins and they can throw whatever they may have into those recycle bins. Some people have enough money and services available that they can have curbside pickup. So they get their trash hauled by Pacific Waste or one of the other waste haulers. Recyclables, not so much. Very few places, but there are some where you can get residential pickup of recyclable materials. Those are taken by private haulers to places like Atlas and business services to get rid of those recyclable materials. So you got to be careful what you're talking about in terms of who's picking it up and who's taking it where. There's a big split on this in this county for residential. That's a transfer station stuff. They can also go directly to the West Hawaii Sanitary Landfill if they want to, and they get to pay to dump stuff. I don't think a lot of residents directly go to the landfills, but they could. The landfills only accept green waste for recycling. They don't take any other recycling materials at that landfill. Commercial is kind of on their own. They do their own thing. And they have haulers that they pay to come and take their stuff to either the landfill, or if it's recyclable, to the recycle shops. And the county really doesn't get involved much, except at the receiving end of dumping it in the landfill or taking the green waste and putting into the mulching operation. How it gets picked up and sorted and whatnot is, for commercial entities, is not under county action, really. Does that make sense? Okay. And Ramsey or Jane or whoever may be on the line, jump in and correct me if I've got it wrong.
Oh, thank you, Judging. I understand. I appreciate your explanation. But I guess I was just trying to say, I know what the commercial haulers do, pretty much. But my concern was all the stuff that's not being recycled and separated are still going whether a commercial person picks it up or not, right? So having the commercial people, I guess this is what I meant. If they're taking whatever trash that's haven't been recycled, just like a residential person, you know, I guess it's not possible for them to take it to the transfer station chute, although it's the same type of trash that residents do because they're commercial haulers. So what I was trying to get at is by having them take that mixed trash and put it in a chute rather than taking it somewhere else for more handling, which is probably not good for them as well. Why can't they just put it in the chute because it's already compressed and ready to be sent to Pu'u'anohulu, right? That's what I'm thinking. So if they're already taking mixed trash, why can't they just put it in a chute, have it compressed, fill it up quick, stick it over for transport to Kona, rather than taking it somewhere else to handle it again, and then, you know, I'm just saying it's like a double handling kind of thing. And the results are the same. They're getting mixed trash. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, the issue right now and the rule that I think is a good one, commercial trash, unsorted waste has to be hauled to the landfill.
Oh.
What we're focused on, or what this ordinance is focused is pick out, segregate, sort at your store, at your business, the stuff that's recycled, and don't throw it in your general trash bin. Whoever picks it up and takes it to the landfill, pull that stuff out, reduce the volume that you're sending to landfill. And you've got to, under this ordinance, do it for different types of materials. You've got to sort it. And then you've got to get it into the recycle stream, or keep paying for the trash hauling that you've got. Again, our whole goal on this would be reduce the volume going into landfill. So clean out that trash, quit throwing it away, divert, get it into the recycle stream. And using for smaller quantities, not big commercial, we can't have Costco, using transfer stations to deal with their corrugated cardboard. They make enough of it, they can deal with it on their own. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, Lee's comment about, you know, just take all those bullets out of there and leave it open-ended. Partly it was, God, they're never going to read this draft ordinance. So I wanted to pull some things up out of it. And maybe there are too many bullets, or maybe we don't need bullets at all. And let's just wait and we'll do bullets later.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I think we should just accept this thing and move on. We can hash this out for hours and hours, and you're just kind of testing the waters anyway. So let's just make those two changes you mentioned earlier about how many years and perhaps a small fee, and just accept it and move on.
Well, I want to be fair. I do not mean for this to be Georgine Adams' ordinance. I want it to be the EMC. So I want to make sure I'm getting your consensus, and it's the consensus of this commission that we move in this direction and we try to set these kinds of boundaries. So Laura.
Chair, thank you. This comment is directly related to the motion at hand. I'm in opposition to sending this to the council as is, being that many of the bullet points, especially in relationship to the ordinance, draft ordinance, have not been thoroughly vetted by the current commission and or even understood, to be honest, and there needs to be a lot more data. And I think Corp Council could speak to this, perhaps at least in terms of educating me. amongst all of us in terms of our duty to vet a lot of this before it goes to council, as opposed to put it on council's burden in the sense of, you know, what previous commissioner had mentioned. I believe that that is our job, is to kind of go through this ahead of time. And if we're going to state that the EMC is requesting this or advising this of the council, that we really should have a lot more details around these bullet points. I don't believe that it's ready in its current draft, being that there's a lot of discussion to be had over the bullet points. I think if anything, it would be a much more general letter. And because I am very concerned that all of the bullet points do summarize, and the second page do summarize the ordinance. And then there's a very small note that says, please note draft ordinance has not been approved verbatim by the EMC, but is rather offered as a starting point, which is wonderful. But I think that if anything would get missed in the entire thing, could be that point. And I think that's a very significant point, given our duty as a commission to come to consensus.
Thank you. And I would say back to you, that's why we're talking about this.
Yes,
to go through and vet it.
Yes, and I appreciate all your energy towards it. Nonetheless, it doesn't take away from any of that. So very much appreciative of all the energy that's put into it.
So again, can I say something? I would like to restate what I mentioned earlier, because I will just note to all of the commissioners that Georgine has been providing this information along with her suggested draft ordinance for months now. So it is incumbent upon the commissioners to review this stuff and come to this meeting so that the discussion can be more about the specifics that are going to be included should the commission vote to submit this to council, and not on education, so to speak, about how DEM currently operates. I think your time is much more valuable if you bring actual things that you want to include in this letter so that the discussion can be specific and on point to that. So I would just renew my suggestion that this get tabled to the next meeting so that the commissioners can do their due diligence and actually reviewing this before the meeting so that the vote can have you know, some standing and we can move forward on this, because this has been on the agenda for months.
Thank you, Sherry.
May?
Oh, Georgine, you're muted for some reason.
I am. I didn't touch anything.
Okay. Couldn't hear you.
I in part agree with Corp Council that we need to, at the very least, narrow this down. We are asking the council people to become engaged in this process, because in the end they have oversight as well as the administration. So as much as anything, we're starting a dialogue with them. And the sooner we get them engaged, the sooner we'll get some input. And because, I mean, everybody's got to be at the table. So over refining at this juncture probably isn't gonna serve us well. I mean, we want to get them thinking about it, get them to engage about it, informing them of their response, what will become their responsibilities to turn into an action, fund to some extent. So, I mean, we just opened the door, and we're trying to narrow it down to a finished product, and I think that's probably not the best use of our time.
I will, Chair Adams.
Laura, yes. Go ahead, Laura.
Just for the record, I did want to mention that I had given comments on this just a few months past, and I don't know that a number of them were incorporated necessarily, but I do know that it would behoove us to get together and work on this a little bit more in real time, as opposed to waiting for the meetings. And I know that my feeling in that as well. So just wanted to make sure that that is understood by the commission. And court counsel.
Other commissioners.
So I'm committed to doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, we did try. Laura and I have gone back and forth. I've got it up on a Google Doc, so there have been some commenting going back and forth with us, but not hard and fast, word by word, beat it up. And even if the two of us were to do that, we'd still need to bring it back to the commission as a whole and have you feel comfortable with it. You know, one avenue is maybe along the lines John was suggesting, that this is opening the door. Here's an idea, fluffing it out. It's not an EMC recommendation to write the rule this way and to use these things as the way to do it. It is to open the door to looking at, are there some requirements we should be putting in place to get more recyclable materials out of the stream going to our landfill. You can do that with just that simple statement, or you could do it with a more fulsome letter. Again, I think in some respects, we could just delete that whole section with the bullets. Or we could say, if we've got particular stands to take, we have voted before that we support the 2019 Integrated Waste Management Plan. And it's got a lot of these things in it in discussion or options. Some are recommendations. So, you know, a lot of ways to approach it. But I'm okay if Sherry's recommendation basically says, do some homework, guys, before our next meeting and come with some specific changes you want to see. I'm not going to work on this anymore before the next meeting to a great degree. And I'm also going to be on the East Coast in September. So I'll be dealing with this later at night at our next meeting. I could still chair it. I'm pretty sure I can manage the Zoom. But I need your help, guys.
If I may, I would ask the question of the members here. Have you engaged your council person yet on the issue?
My what?
You know, it's another door we're going to have to open.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
I didn't understand what you said, John. Sorry.
Have you talked to your council person?
No, I have not.
Your district council person. I certainly would. I have spoken with mine, albeit it wasn't at the top of her list. I've mentioned it, and I've put her on notice that we're going to have to sit down and have a conversation about this at some point. So I would suggest that all of the rest of you do the same thing, because in the end, they are going to have to vote on it, up or down. And we're also going to have to get it by the administration. So there you have it.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. We're still in the middle of a vote, so we have to decide. Don't we have to either take the vote or rescind it to table?
I just want to make sure that we had enough discussion. Are people ready to vote either we support this with some minor changes on the number of years left and take out the perhaps language in the last bullet, or table it till next time and say no. So I think we seem to be running down in terms of specific comments on this. So I think you're right, Lee. Time to take a vote.
Chair, question. We're currently on the main motion of whether to send the letter with amendments or not. Is someone going to make a subsidiary motion to postpone the letter with amendments to a certain time?
I would motion for that second, the subsidiary motion.
Okay, postpone until
More
next
public
meeting.
input, yes, and also I feel like our due diligence as a commission is to seek more public input around this as well, and I understand, you know, it's publicly noted as sunshine law on the agenda, but I do know that most people aren't looking at that. So suggestions like talking with our council person is also potentially looking at more of a working group around this, including nonprofits, recyclers, farmers. There's engagement opportunities in our community to get deeper public input, and I think that would be behoove us, especially moving before we move towards council, because they're going to then receive that on a whole different level of the public comment. But if we can work through some of that in a working group prior to that, and because I think the fundamental idea and the basis, Chair, is wonderful, and we have to move towards that. Absolutely. So.
Sorry, is there a second on the postponement? Motion to postpone?
Second.
Teolotsuka, right?
If we have a,
Okay.
if I may just, we need to, again, keep saying this until you think it's your idea. Engaging your council person, because they are going to have to sign off on whatever it is that we end up presenting. It is both the administration and council people that are going to be responsible for this. So it's important to get them thinking about it. And in some cases,
certainly I would commend everybody to talk to their council member about the fact that we're knocking this around. And that's fine. To go to getting a lot more information from different public bodies, I think we need to be, and Sherry pipe in on this, but I would rather that occur as part of a public meeting, rulemaking, if anything, led by DEM. And we are sunshined for collecting a lot of public information. So we need to be careful. We can do individual conversations with people, but we can't represent, we're talking as EMC when we do that. So
that is correct.
I'm okay with postponing it yet another month. And I hopefully have given you enough meat to work on, and you can come back and talk, and we can talk more specifics at next meeting. So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. Any other discussion on postponement? Seeing none, take a vote, Peter.
On the postponements, Ms. Ocasio.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. McIntosh.
Aye.
Mr. Olson.
aye.
Ms. Otsuka.
Aye.
Ms. Norris.
Aye.
Chair Adams.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, thank you, people. Now, perhaps as Sherry and Laura have acknowledged, this is in the public record. both this draft letter and the draft ordinance. And we do have comment from Christine Kubat, at least, as part of that public input. So if I can, at this point, ask Christine to speak to us.
Aloha, can you hear me?
Are you closer? Can you get a little closer to the mic or send it her way?
I can get closer to the mic. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. I apologize, my computer died and I'm just like in a big mess here. So thanks for being tolerant. So yeah, you know, when we look at this, the overarching goal is to divert materials from landfill. And we need to start moving forward with everything we do to keep this resource recovery model in our minds so that everything that we're talking about is within that framework. And this initiative is not in line with that framework. There's a lot of like carryover from ways we used to think about things. We're moving to a post-carbon economy. There's a sea change, you know, happening at the global level with all these initiatives. And, you know, just to point out, one of the ways that this initiative is not in line with that new thinking is that if you talk to the leading environmental groups at this time, if you talk to the people that are engaged in the INC at the United Nations level on preventing plastic pollution, we're all looking at landfills as a place to stockpile materials. And so it's not, we wouldn't want to go out there and say, oh, okay, our goal is to reduce the volume of materials going to landfill. We should be looking at landfills as a place where we could shred and park tires until we know how to effectively turn them into materials that are not hazardous. The same thing with certain plastics. And so that right there in and of itself doesn't work. We need to really take the time. I'm in a position, Recycle Hawaii, we're in a position to bring experts to the table. It's very exciting to see this commission and the Roth administration very forward thinking, wanting to lead even on a global level on these initiatives. So I think it would be really good for us to start to partner and bring some of that expertise in to help with whatever initiative is brought forward. Because the truth of it is, if we really focus on reuse infrastructure, if we look at decarbonization, there's going to be a natural reduction in the amount of materials going to the landfill. We're not going to have to say, hey, you can't put that there. This stuff is not going to be generated to begin with. But there's this messy interim liminal period where we're like, what do we do with this stuff until? And in this case, landfills are being looked at by and large as a place to stockpile, to hold materials. We do not want to invest in recycling infrastructure for our island. That's going to lock us into a trajectory where we're dependent on plastic recyclable materials coming over and again. I've got 30 seconds. And these federal programs, this is not magic money that just comes and goes. These are serious major investments in reuse infrastructure, in resource recovery infrastructure. So these are the kinds of things that I hope the commission would keep in mind as you move forward with this. I commend you for all the energy that you put into it. And Recycle Hawaii, we're here and willing to bring expertise to the table to help bring all of this thinking in line with global trends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Never mind. Certainly you guys are one of the public stakeholders that we need to make sure get involved in discussions. So ever onward, past our tabled item. And I've lost my agenda. And our agenda next goes to, or I guess I should ask, oh, I have a request in to take a break. Alrighty, we will take a 5-minute break and come back here and hear some more from our Deputy Corporation Counsel on a couple of items. So 5 minutes, guys. So Hilo's muted. Peter?
No one heard that. We're rolling.
Okay, I think we've got quorum. Looks like so John and Lee are not on screen, but we've got 5 of us on screen. Thank you, John. Peter's told me that his computer is going to reboot and knock us offline. So I guess we'll deal with that when it happens.
We'll zip through from now till then.
I'm sorry?
We're gonna zip through from now till then.
Oh, zipping. Okay. Corporate council is up. We are on unfinished business 5.3, where we made a request to Deputy Corporation Counsel to evaluate the feasibility and steps to move from a property tax-based support for solid waste management to a fee-for-service model. And we gave you an excerpt from the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan 2019, talked about some of the different ways other than the property tax to cover costs. And the never-ending saga, John, of how the heck can we better fund our solid waste management needs. So take it away, Sherry.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I would just encourage the commission, the section that I actually was hoping you folks would refer to is section 3 of the 2019 Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan, but section 10, which was provided, does give a shortened version of that. Essentially, I was asked to evaluate the feasibility and steps to move from a property tax-based support for DEM to a fee-for-service model. I would first like to start off with reminding the commission that per the county charter, the EMC shall advise the department on waste reduction strategies, recycling, litter control, community involvement, and other issues related to the functions of the department. EMC does not have the authority to implement such a change. To move forward with this type of change, you would need council to legislatively move to do so. Further, DEM does not have the authority to start charging a fee for disposal of solid waste at the transfer stations, nor does it have the infrastructure. Legislative action would be necessary to amend DEM rules to impose this type of fee. It is my opinion that this is a non-delegable legislative function. Currently, DEM is financed through the general fund via property taxes. This type of change that EMC asked me to evaluate would be considered a fee and not a tax. For a charge to be considered a fee, it must be charged to the beneficiary of that particular service, be reasonably proportionate to the benefit received, be allocated directly to defraying the cost of that service, meaning it is not a profit to DEM, and it must be optional, in that the party paying the fee can basically forego the service to avoid the charge. So questions that EMC can consider is how would you apply this fee equally to the public? Again, I would ask that you refer to the ISWMP that was done in 2019, specifically in section 3 of that. It talks about Kauai implementing a pay-as-you-throw ordinance back in 2014. I would note that I checked again this morning, and this fee, pay-as-you-throw, essentially was done via county council through an ordinance number 975 that was passed in 2014. The ordinance went into effect in 2015. And again, this is something that is billed through real property tax because that is the only way to equally apply it across the entire county. Another question that you'd have to ask is what kind of incentive would a renter have to pay for trash disposal? How would you get them to buy in, and what would be done to avoid illegal dumping due to a disagreement with paying a fee? Again, the fee has to be optional, and the party that would be required to pay the fee for the service essentially can choose to not participate in the service and avoid the charge. So in the ISWMP, the pertinent part, as I mentioned, is section 3. The commission opined at that time about establishing a pay-as-you-throw system for residential discards. If you look at that report, and I encourage you to do so, the most important factor is considering the infrastructure costs, the notice and education that would be required to establish such a system, and the financial system that would need to be put into place to essentially create a pay-as-you-throw program. Something that a consultant who specializes in this type of data gathering can do. So the next steps, as I was asked, would be first, DEM needs to decide that this is what it wants to do. Secondly, DEM needs to do a comprehensive study on the actual applicability of such a program in this county. Our county is much larger and has different, it's very different from Kauai, to say the least. Finally, county council and only the council can take up this issue legislatively to amend the county code. The EMC can do research and advise DEM on whether or not it should move in this direction, but on its own, EMC does not have the power or authority to make its change or to make this change. So again, when I did my research and looked at the system that is in place on Kauai, they legislatively passed an ordinance, ordinance number, and you can look it up, is 975. They charge for a size of a, they went to curbside pickup. They charge through real property tax, monthly bill for the size of the bin that that particular household requests. They charge $10 for a 64-gallon bin per month, and they charge $18 for a 96-gallon bin. It has not necessarily reduced their trash being dumped into their landfill. I'm not sure if you're aware, but they're currently, due to new laws and regulations that have been passed, they have a very critical situation with the one landfill that they have very close to reaching capacity, and they've been unable to get a second location approved through the Department of Health, through the EPA, through all of the legislation and the laws that have been passed with regards to the location, the type of land that can be used to create a sanitary landfill. They're experiencing extreme challenges. So that is what I have to present to you. Again, EMC can do further research on it. I would recommend that you check out the ISWMP, specifically section 3. It talks about the types of programs that could be created, essentially putting system scales at the transfer stations. Again, a very huge upfront infrastructure cost. And really the biggest thing, and I think with everything that EMC is currently looking at, it's about education and educating the public about, personally, I've learned a lot of things just being the corporation counsel for EMC that I never learned through educational opportunities about recycling. So it's something that perhaps the EMC can take into consideration and look into. But that's what I have to present for you guys. It's a legislative function that needs to be done. Kauai did do it back in 2014, but it didn't necessarily alleviate the issues that they have in that jurisdiction.
Was there anything in there about shipping it off island?
No.
That they looked at? Nothing.
I did not specifically look into if Kauai did any research on that. That is something that DEM has been considering, but right now state law needs to be changed for that to be a permissible option. We cannot just transport our municipal solid waste over the ocean. If we could drive it to Oahu, we'd be having a much different conversation, because H Power does have an issue meeting its quota for, its incinerator. But right now it is not an option because we don't legally have a way to do it. State legislature would need to change the laws that would permit.
State.
Well,
it would be in state. It would be something that, because we sit in international waters. So my partial question would be: does it have a hook in it there somewhere that would necessitate more than just local action to accommodate that end?
I would have to look into that.
Yeah.
But essentially the waters that are surrounding our state, it's and the Department of Health and the EPA are responsible for, enforcing the laws and the regulations that currently exist with regards to our state waters. But there isn't a legal mechanism currently that permits other counties to send their waste to Oahu via a barge.
As Oahu, are you aware of any action that Oahu may be considering?
I am not, but if you would request, I'm happy to reach out to my counterparts on Oahu to
Could you
find
look
out
into that to see if they're making any moves to? I'd much rather make it their garbage than ours.
Understood. I will get back to you.
Okay.
A couple things. A while back, and I think it was to EMC, we had somebody from Kauai's recycle program talking about what they were doing and what was successful and not. I'd have to go back and look at when that was, but maybe that's something worth looking at again. We could ask for an update, although maybe Ramsey already knows, since I think all the directors talk to each other. My understanding is that a big part of the problem with Kauai is they were planning on putting up a MRF, a materials recovery facility, and did not do that. So yeah, they got curbside collection, and yeah, they differentially charge for recycle and trash, but they don't have a way to do further sorting and recycling of their recyclables. So they didn't close the loop. So we could look into that. I don't know if Ramsey, if you're listening, if there's any information you guys have immediately, or whether we can agendize that for next meeting.
Thank you. Sherry, thank you for that great report. John, to answer your question, as you all know, I've been, very interesting since I started with the idea of, since I came from city and county, with the idea of generating more energy and get some type of credit from other counties, because it is very, very hard to site a landfill. And we've seen it within the city and county itself. They were given certain time to be able to find the location. They failed. They set aside more than $200 million for land they cannot find. In my meeting with the director of city and county, they just upgraded its power to tier 4 or better, so it produces very, very clean air. Technology in Europe very well known, and for these type of waste to energy conversion, where your carbon emission is really controlled to none almost. In addition to that, they do have the capacity. The Hawaii County, their charter allows us, our charter allows us to transport waste. But city and county, the only island within the state that prohibits the receipt of any waste from adjacent islands. Therefore, that's going to require legislative or ordinances changes by city and county. We talked to Young Brothers, you know, they also has mentioned that as well. They'll be willing to haul the waste if it's compacted, wrapped, and plastic thrown into the sea containers to give it the protection, liquid control, and volume quantities. So there's good opportunity, but it's really, does the city and county willing to take that on, given the hard challenges they have in siting a landfill? Are they willing to take it through legislation and allow city and county to receive waste from other counties? And I think that's where it really fall. You know, it's from our county, I think we don't have anything that prevents us from transporting waste. It's just the receiving end, the one that need to change the laws. And Kauai Island, I know they have a challenge. They flew here to meet with me and my staff about wastewater and solid waste. They wanted to learn from our county, and they did give us kudos of how we operating both of our systems, the wastewater and solid waste. My intent was to fly back and kind of look at their system and brainstorm solutions with them as well. So that's where we at with other counties, Georgia, and hopefully that addressed your question.
Okay, I'll look and see if I can find that presentation that we had from Kauai a while back, and if it's still pertinent for us. One of the things that EMC could consider, and let me know if you want it on the agenda for next time, is do we want to recommend to our council to go to Oahu and let us ship our waste there? On the one hand, burning waste is not the top of the waste hierarchy, it's the bottom. And it's kind of a last resort if we can't figure out other ways to do it. Hence, trying to deal with, at least keep the recyclables out of our landfill. But it's an option, and we could talk about it again, perhaps next time.
We can talk about it. I think the big challenge is really, even if we go to our council to say, could we ship our waste? The big question is, city and county need to be willing. No,
it would be a recommendation for council to go and lobby for that change.
You know, HSAT is coming up in September. I would imagine, hopefully I'm going to be attending that. I'm going to hopefully bring it up in the discussions as well, because city and county themselves got a challenge. They're looking at probably expending about $1 billion by the time they operate the new landfill, get it ready and going. So they just spend about $380 million to upgrade the edge power. That's a lot of money just to make sure that their scrubbers up to date on carbon emissions and other pollutants. So, you know, they may not have the capacity for all the islands. And they need to run calculation to make sure that they could provide. As you all know, my vision was early on, turn it to a state-owned facility and let the state Department of Health kind of regulate that facility based on other counties' revenue versus a credit, so they could upgrade that facility to take all other counties. And I think that's probably could be win-win for every county within the state, and it'll be a win for the state as they could generate energy and give credits to other counties and yet generate revenue as well.
Well, from my side, I definitely go for it. Do it. Whether you need EMC to formally support that, let us know and we can put that on agenda for next time. The other comment I'll make is pay as you throw is something that I believe is going to be covered in your solid waste operations analysis. Is that correct?
Both of them would. We're going to look at every option, even taking it to Oahu, that's an option as well. So most of the things that you guys talked about based on the letters that you guys thinking about turning into our county council, all that is going to be addressed in that operational study, as I mentioned in the last EMC. So yeah, the study, our consultant has already started the process of interviewing our staff, understanding our current operation. And we moving forward with that. My question is, Sherry, I don't know, can this go to the constituent? I know it's a shorter, could it go out as a ballot to the constituent to vote on what they like to have? Rather than do it by ordinances, because eventually, if the voters speak, it become the new charter, right? And there's a lot of people that would love to do recycling and diversions, and so if we put it out to the public and let them vote on it, at least we get a clear direction. And if it becomes the new charter, let it be the new charter, but the people have spoken.
Referendum.
I don't understand your
He's looking at a referendum. Wants to do a referendum.
We can talk about it. I can't give you an answer off the top of my head because I'm not quite grasping what you want to put out to a vote.
Depends what's being changed.
Basically.
And because the voters will need to have massive education, because is what I can see when things are put out there, things are created, and there really isn't a full understanding of the cost of implementation of things. And so we can have a chat later, Ramsey.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought, I know we talked about it earlier of, you know, because I know it's part of the taxes now, but if we want to take it out of the property tax and make it a fee, then maybe the people would like to handle it that way, because that way they could control what type of service they wanted to have, rather than dictate it what service we could provide. But yeah, food for thoughts. That's how most of other municipalities doing it. It's a fee for a service. If they want more service, they have to pay more fees.
And if they want less service?
That's where you send it out to vote. If the majority speaks, then the program applies to all.
Okay.
And that's why the people will have the final say. And if that passes, then it's a clear direction where the county wanted to go. If the people don't want it, then the majority will speak as well. And the minority that won recycling and diversion may not get what they want, and vice versa. But I think most of these type of municipalities around the country, they do have what we refer to as land use fee, refuse and fees that is set up not part of the property tax, but rather than like the wastewater, it's rate fees that could be adjusted.
Okay, we can talk about it outside of this meeting.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
I think it may be coming back perhaps at next meeting with a proposal of what could we go to council to ask for. And even if we wanted to ask them for a charter amendment, we need to have the council more or less on board for doing that.
I think that would be premature for now. Let the study take its course.
Yeah.
I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse and find out after the study that your cart was not fit to take the passengers. So I think we got a qualified consultant that is working on such analysis and study. Let's see what they come up with, and it could lead to, my anticipation, it's going to lead to policies and procedures if our county council willing to take it on.
Okay, let's move because we're way behind. Item number 4 was a request to Deputy Corporation Counsel to follow up on the response from the Department of Health, Office of Solid Waste Management, to that letter that we ginned up from EMC asking, have you looked into point of purchase, advanced disposal fee beyond just the high 5? And we got a response, sort of. Yeah. So Sherry, if you can tell us what we received.
Yes, thank you. So in May, DEM sent a letter to the State Department of Health Office of Solid Waste Management, basically with the request that was sent from EMC. They informed us rather quickly after they received the letter that they are currently updating the statewide integrated solid waste management plan, and they are focusing on 8 solid waste issues identified by the state and how to address those issues, which includes lithium-ion batteries, construction waste, carpet, packaging, and other materials. The contractor that they are currently or the consultant that is currently doing this study for them is also presenting potential solutions for each waste issue, like for a discussion, like extended producer responsibility, advanced disposal fees, and what types of legislation needs to be passed statewide to effectuate these type of programs. So the study is currently being done. They're in the process of updating their solid waste management plan. And the request that you folks had is something that they actually have included in that study. So I am watching to see when that plan comes out, and I will provide that information to the commission so you can look it over.
Great.
So we wanted to know if they were doing anything, and basically they said
they're
yes.
studying it. That's good.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we see. Lots of studies to come back to us. Any other questions or comments about what Sherry's reported? Otherwise, we'll move on to section 6, reports and correspondence, the director's informational report. Go, Ramsey.
Once again, thank you all. Thank you, Sherry. Great information that you just provided for us and the commission. As far as legislative updates, keep thinking if you have any potential legislation that you guys would like us to submit to our administration or submit to our elected officials, either in the state or the county or the House. Let us know. Start thinking. I know I attended a meeting yesterday about political waste water, and some of the question came about possible legislation is try to allow pass-through funding to nonprofit organization that probably could benefit the community in this cesspool conversion, that's going to come and hit us all pretty soon, because it's going to be a huge project for the state and the counties. We don't have the capacity, nor does the Department of Health has the capacity. But if a new legislation goes into effect where it could allow some of the grants and state funding and federal funding to these nonprofit, they could take some of these tasks away from us, but they probably do a more efficient delivery to these communities. So, it was discussed, and it seemed like it has some merit to it. And like I said, any ideas beyond this idea that also could assist into a more efficient way of doing our business and to meet the climate change requirement and the carbon emission reduction requirement as well. That's from the solid waste, from the wastewater, the Clean Water Act, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So anything that you guys foresee that need to become a law or need to go through legislation, jog it down and let's talk about it, and let's see how we could funnel it through, and hopefully we could either pass, hopefully get passed or get denied, but at least let us try.
Yeah.
Solid waste diversion, I'll give it to my recycling coordinator. Greg, let's see if he's.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, you want to take the lead on number 2?
Yes, so recently we were contacted by the State Department of Agriculture. We're gonna assist them with finding a site in Hilo and Kona for their commercial pesticide disposal collection events. So it's been 15 years since they had their last collection event. The event will be free to the commercial entities, and they'll be able to dispose up to 250 pounds of canceled, suspended, unwanted, and unlabeled pesticides. So it's exciting to hear about that. So it's just for commercial, and that's because we offer the household hazardous waste collections for residents, which we just had one on August 12th in Kona, and there were approximately, 350 customers, and the Hilo event was on August 5th, where they had 600 customers and approximately 2,500 gallons of used motor oil was collected.
So it sounds like that option worked.
Yeah. And then the other thing, getting back to the state ISWMP, is that I talked to my friend who I went to college with and actually worked at the campus recycling center there. And he's with the city and county of Honolulu. So we started talking about solar panel or photovoltaic, what to do with it. Try to stay ahead of the game before it comes to us and we just react to it.
Yeah, it's gonna come.
Yeah. In addition to that, I think we've been getting requests about the vaping e-cigarettes because they have these little batteries in it as well. And I think these type of devices could be collected during the hazardous household events as well. We are also currently working with Council Member Villegas and Michelle Galumba on that single-use plastic ban. I know it's very important to all of you as well. So we're working on that. City and county passed it. It was Bill 40, if I recall, when I was there. We navigated that through the Chamber of Commerce, and it was ordained and it was implemented just the year before I left to come here. So hopefully my department and working with council members will navigate through the same type of ordinances and bills and see what's good for our county as well. Solid waste operations analysis update. As I mentioned earlier, the consultant started the interview process with our staff, put their hand around the operation currently, the way it's going, and our facilities as well. Wastewater division updates, Pahala Nalehu, just to let you know that we have a public meeting, community meeting, set up with both communities on August 24th to go over the preliminary engineering report that was submitted to us by the engineering, BNC, and also was submitted to EPA. EPA has approved that information as was submitted, but did not approve the recommendation as we have not yet submitted it to the community. And we doing the community meeting. The intent always was to meet with the communities, present the options, and get the community's involvement on such options. And that is going to take place, as I said, August 24th. West Hawaii wastewater projects, Alakehe project is win the 60% design for the headworks, and the odor control and the septic receiver, in addition to the R1 based on the sand filter, but we're gonna modify that to allow MBR filtering system after the sand filter, so we can maximize the quality of that effluent before discharge. Hilo waste treatment plant upgrades, we are at the 50% design first two. We still on schedule. The project probably gonna go out on the street sometime in April. Notice to proceed is projected in June. We're gonna do some modification to control the costs and the budget. So we are reworking the bid items to figure out which one's gonna be alternate bid versus items that must do. So that's on track as well. Wastewater plans for Pahoa, Puna, and Puluco, South Kohala, are on track as well. Kelly's, I think, tied up with the solid waste operations study.
I'm here, Ramsey.
Oh, you here? Okay. Thanks, Kelly. If you want to give an update on these master plans that one you're working on.
Sure. Starting with Puna. The county just reopened the project website. Our plan is to go public with the facility plan. We're going to be holding a meeting with county council to get input on the facility plan for the public as well as the council. That'll be September 5th. We're also rolling in the Pahoa feasibility study with Puna in that presentation since they're so related. So you might want to mark that on your calendars. And then we pushed out the date to file the final PEIS to September 23rd to accommodate this presentation and schedule change. For Puaco, everything's on schedule. They completed the PDR in July of this year. The next milestones that are on deck, we'll be looking to get the draft wastewater master plan in November. And then we will see the final, we're looking at June of 2024. And I believe that covers everything on the agenda for the plans.
Just to give you updates on my community meeting pertaining to Wuko yesterday, the big question that came out of the meeting, it really came down to ownership between private and public. Manalani they showed interest to take the flow from that community. The challenge is who's going to construct the sewer collection and who's going to have the ownership. Can a county own a collection but hook it up to a private treatment? And I think, Sherry, they're going to end up hiring an attorney to request interpretation of this current administration on where they stand with the Kuno decision. Can publicly owned sewer collection be tied up to a publicly owned waste treatment plan? And how could that work from a legal point of view of how it's going to impact, if any, that decision? And because they're ready to move forward with that if that clear legal interpretation is being dusted out and everybody understand the roles and responsibility of the county to move forward with a community sewer district only in charge of the collection, where it's going to be tied up to a privately owned treatment system.
Sounds reasonable to me, but oh my.
It happens. I mean, we have currently government facility tied up to a private treatment plan, but I don't know to what extent this. I don't know. They needed it. They need to move forward with it. We couldn't give them the answer. We told them, hire your own attorney, and maybe our attorneys could work with your attorneys in finding a better interpretation, because we engineers, no matter how we read it, it's Georgianne, you're right. It may be reasonable to you and me, but from a legal interpretation, there's some roadblocks. But it's I think they may end up doing that because Mono opened the doors for them for that service.
Well, it'd also probably be good for you guys to have some pre-treatment rules in the books too.
It's a win-win, definitely. There's no reason to continue pollution without finding solutions.
Yeah.
And if the solution within our reach to prevent pollution, let's tackle that solution. I'm sorry, I sounded like
We're starting to do a hip hop thing here. A somewhat sidebar related question, maybe. We've got this new emergency housing process in place that Green signed, that's going to shrink or expand rather, the size of new development that doesn't have to go through all the normal review processes, which I assume includes environmental review processes, to speed things up and save money. Are you looking at the possible repercussions to your operations from expanded development?
Yes, from
answer that question very briefly. So my office and specifically the housing division is working on that, and this is for one specific project in our jurisdiction that this applies to. So yes, we are very well aware of it, and we're going to ensure that they're following the necessary steps. It has a lot to do with planning, but it's just going to impact one housing development in Kona. Mm-hmm. That's all that. It's very specific. It's not anyone anywhere can do anything.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you.
If I can, and I might let each of the commissioners expand if they need to. Item 6.4 is information requests from commissioners, and Lee McIntosh had a question about the process to install a scale at Waiohinu transfer station.
It goes back to the operational study we're doing. There is the possibility you could, the way we're going to look at Waiohinu, it could be a regional facility for the Ka'u district. We haven't got there yet. My vision for Waiohinu could be the next Hilo reload facility for that Ka'u district that could capture volcano, Pahala Nalehu, Waiohinu, and we need to look at the boundary, because currently we only have one reload facility on the whole island, which is Hilo. So we need to see how we could distribute the waste, but that's going to be part of that operational study. So Lee, there's the possibility, we talked about it as we were constructing that site when I came in with the idea of we could put a cover structure, we could put a scale, we could even allow, I heard you all talking about allowing commercial into transfer station and how is that going to be managed and what have you. The reason we cannot allow commercial because of the space that we have within the reload facility at Hilo. And allowing commercial, that mean we have to double our equipment to transport the waste back and forth, and we don't have that as well. So all that being, you know, discussed with the consultant, and we need to navigate through it. So the short answer to your question, Lee, it has been considered and it's under consideration, and we since Wahino now, it's becoming the most recent beautiful transfer station on that region. That also may include Ocean View as well, because Ocean View may be limited, but now within 10-15 minutes drive, they'll have better accessibility to more recyclables, containers, and what have you. So, because it's really well designed. But yeah, the project has not completed. The process is, if that become the intent, we need to put it under the capital improvement project list and need to go through the budgeting process, identification process of where it's going to fall within priorities, and start planning for it. But that's what the process is all about. So yes, it won't be overnight, but it's definitely could be something pointed out as the future vision of that facility.
That answer your question, Lee?
Please muted.
Yes.
Did it answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on to a couple of questions from Dell. First one, item 2 is, have you heard anything back from R&D on their request for information for sustainable infrastructure that applies to you guys?
I don't know if my staff have. I have personally, I've been tied up with any other stuff, but I could check with my staff, see where they at on that. And Peter could either add it, yeah, next meeting probably give you an update on it, but I personally have not, no.
Okay. Next one is talking about HER and the cost to the county for green waste management. Both how much did you pay them last fiscal year, and how much green waste did they divert?
Yes, so last year it was approximately 4.4 million. So about 1 million in Hilo for the east side and 3.4 for Kona, for Kuanahulu. And total tonnages was 36,614, 9,624 on the east, and 26,989 on the west.
That was tons?
Yeah, tons.
Did you have more question? Need more clarification, Dell, on that?
No, thank you.
And then our last question is kind of the never-ending one. What kind of vacancies do you still have at DEM, and what are you doing to try to fill them?
Hi, I'm Robin Bauman, the business manager. So we do have numerous vacancies. We've got about 37 right now. Like other departments, filling positions is challenging, finding applicants that meet the qualifications and that, you know, are available. So we're doing a number of things. We've got several positions that are hard to fill, like civil engineers, wastewater treatment plant operators. So on some of those, we're recruiting at multiple levels. So, you know, we have a vacant civil engineer 4 position. We will also recruit at civil engineer 3, 2, and 1 in hopes that we find somebody that can grow. We can't fill it at the 4 level. We might find somebody at level 2 or 3 that can eventually grow and promote into that level 4 position. So that's just widening the pool of possible applicants. Same thing with our wastewater treatment plant operators. We have everything from an assistant wastewater treatment plant operator up to operator 4 level. So it's very difficult to find somebody with a grade 4 license. So we're also recruiting at multiple levels there. In addition, we're also, you know, advertising, you know, in the paper or in trade publications, trying to get the word out. I know Ramsey and Brenda have both personally been going to different job fairs, handing out flyers, talking to people, trying to, you know, get some interest that way as well. One of the big things that's going to be helping us out now is we were finally able to fill our human resource program specialist position. For quite some time, we were down to one person in our HR section. So we're now fully staffed in our HR section with human resource program specialists, HR technician 1, and a clerk 3 to help them out. So with that, we'll be able to move through more recruitments more quickly.
Thank you. I do have, excuse me?
No, Del, I hear you in Fresno, Clovis. So you may want to head to California State University. That's my hometown.
Well, I wanted to take a tour of their different facilities, but not yet. But, you know, thank you, Ryan. It's a concern for me with staffing because it's everybody's problem, you know, and I do understand the challenges. But, you know, when I looked at some of the applications, a few months ago, there were 24. You know, 4 of them were existing positions and 20 were new. So I was wondering, too, how many of those are filled. But I also noticed when I looked at the different job applications, or jobs, there was a considerable gap between the shortage and the recent job postings. I looked at only 2 in specific, where what I perceived the responsibility of one, or maybe the issue is the pay doesn't compensate, you know, but there was a supervisor position or superintendent position, SR 24, you know, without any, didn't need any degree versus a recycling specialist level 18 that required a bachelor's degree. And so a lot of the responsibilities and qualifications pretty identical. So I was just wondering too, because of the staffing problems we're having, you know, how is the process done? You know, who determines the specific job descriptions and the pay, and how, because one of them, the posting was only 7 days, which is the one that required a degree. And the other one was from 2022, and it's an open position that required no education, similar qualifications, higher pay, and no degree. So I was just wondering too. So I don't know. I just wanted to know how the process goes, you know, and I want to be able to understand how we can correct it, because I've talked to different high schools. I've called the university. They do have career pathways for high school kids, and they also have an apprenticeship program at the HCC. you know, but my concern too is internships are important. You know, it helps our kids if we have kids that's in high school that want to work where their parents work or want to understand and stay in the islands because they're just family rooted. It's hard for them if they can't have any opportunities to maybe, you know, get into the program. Or, you know, I know you folks have been working with FAIR, and that's good. But I don't know. I just wanted to have more of a transparency with the hiring process, what is actually done, how it's determined, because all of it will end up with morale issues if we don't hire properly. I don't know.
If I can interrupt, and I'm sorry to do this.
No.
Maybe you can be connected with the new HR hire and have a sit-down conversation with them. Is that possible, Ramsey?
Yeah, that is fine. Usually just to give you a brief answer to your concern, Dill, is we usually follow the Department of Human Resource and the union requirements when it comes to these announcement and job description. We could go and revise the job description. Our department could recommend the changes. We have to run it through consultation with the union and then the Department of Human Resource. But it is doable. And we've done it for, I think, maybe 2 or 3 job descriptions since I started, but there is a process to go about doing it.
Okay. So the reason I interrupted and was hoping that Dell would have an opportunity to maybe talk some more offline. I knew you are talking about civil servants, so that whole structure makes it more complicated. But worse is Peter's computer that's hosting this meeting is going to reboot in just less than 5 minutes. And when he does, we'll be offline and everybody has to hang around so we can finish this meeting. Or I can jump and just close meeting out. So I think I'm going to jump because we never know. So as always, future items, if you want things, specific things, you find some new information, send it off to me and Peter, and we'll try to work it into the agenda for our next meeting, which is September 27th, and it'll be in Kona. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn before the computer breaks.
Second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting is officially closed. The computer can reboot and